What else could we promised each and she, like some wild creature newly caged, commenced a to and fro, so pacing till she paused by Florian, holding out her lily arms, took both his hands, and smiling faintly said, I knew you at the first, though you have grown, you scarce have altered. I am sad and glad to see you, Florian. I give thee to death, my brother. It was duty spoke, not I. My needful seeming harshness, pardon it. Our mother, is she well? With that she kissed his forehead, then, a moment after, clung about him, and betwixt them blossomed up, from out a common vein of memory, sweet household talk and phrases of the hearth, and, for allusion, till the gracious dews began to glisten and fall, and while they stood so rapt we gazing, came a voice, I brought a message here from Lady Blanc. Back started she, and turning round we saw the Lady Blanc's daughter, where she stood, Melissa, with her hand upon the lock, a rosy blonde, and in a college gown that clad her like an April daffodilly, her mother's color, with her lips apart, and all her thoughts as fair within her eyes, as bottom agates seen to wave and float in crystal currents of clear morning seas. So stood that same fair creature at the door. Then Lady Psyche, ah, Melissa, you heard us, and Melissa, oh, pardon me. I heard, I could not help it, did not wish. But, dearest lady, pray you fear me not, nor think I bear that heart within my breast, to give 3 gallant gentlemen to death. I trust you, said the other, for we two were always friends, none closer, elm and vine, but yet your mother's jealous temperament. Let not your prudence, dearest, drowse or prove the Donald of a leaky vase, for fear this whole foundation ruin, I lose my honor, these their lives. Ah, fear me not. No, not for all Aspasia's cleverness. No, not to answer Madame all those hard things that Sheba came to ask of Solomon. Be it so. The other, that we still may lead the new light up and culminate in peace, for Solomon may come to Sheba yet, said Cyril. Madame, he, the wisest man, feasted the woman wisest then in halls of Lebanonian cedar. Nor should you, though, madam, you should answer, we would ask, less welcome find among us. If you came among us, debtors for our lives to you, myself for something more, he said not what, but thanks, she answered, go. We have been too long. Together, keep your hoods about the face. They do so, that affect abstraction here. Speak little, mix not with the rest, and hold your promise. All, I trust, may yet be well. We turned to go, but Cyril took the child, and held her round the knees against his waist, and blew the swollen cheek of a trumpeter, while Psyche watched them smiling, and the child pushed her flat hand against his face and laughed. And thus our conference closed, and then we strolled for half the day through stately theatres, benched crescent-wise, in each we sat we heard the grave professor on lecture slate, the circle rounded under female hands. With flawless demonstration flowed then a classic lecture, rich in sentiment, with scraps of thunderous epic lilted out by violet-hooded doctors, elegies, and quoted odes, and jewels 5 words long, that on the stretched forefinger of all time sparkle forever. Then we dipped in all that treats of whatsoever is the state, the total chronicles of man, the mind, the moral something of the frame, the rock, the star, the bird, the fish, the shell, the flower, electric, chemic laws, and all the rest, and whatsoever can be taught and known, to like 3 horses that have broken fence, and glutted all night long, breast deep in corn. We issued, gorged with knowledge, and I spoke. Why, sirs, they do all this as well as we. They hunt old trails, said Cyril, very well. But when did woman ever yet invent? Ungracious, answered Florian. Ye have learnt no more from Psyche's lecture. You that talked the trash that made me sick and almost sad. Oh, trash, he said, but with a kernel in it. Should I not call her wise who made me wise? And learnt? I learnt more from her in a flash than in my brain pan were an empty hull, and every muse tumbled a science in. 1,000 hearts lie fallow in these halls, and around these halls 1,000 baby loves fly, twanging headless arrows at the hearts, whence follows many a vacant pang. But, oh, with me, sir, entered in the bigger boy, the head of all, the golden-shafted firm, the long-limbed lad that had a Psyche too. He cleft me through the stomacher. And now what think you of it, Florian? Do I chase the substance or the shadow? Will it hold? I have no sorcerer's malison on me, no ghostly hauntings, like His Highness. I flatter myself that always everywhere I know the substance when I see it. Well, are castles shadows? 3 of them? Is she, the sweet proprietress, a shadow? If not, shall those 3 castles patch my tattered coat? For dear are those 3 castles to my wants, and dear is Sister Psyche to my heart, and 2 dear things are one of double worth, and much I might have said, but that my zone unmanned me. Then the doctors. Oh, to hear the doctors. Oh, to watch the thirsty plants imbibing. Once or twice I thought to roar, to break my chain, to shake my mane, but thou, modulate me, soul of mincing mimicry, make liquid treble of that bassoon my throat. Abase those eyes that ever loved to meet, star sisters answering under crescent brows. Abate the stride which speaks of man, and loose a flying charm of blushes o'er this cheek. Were they like swallows coming out of time? We'll wonder why they came. But hark the bell, for dinner let us go. And in we streamed among the columns, pacing, staid and still, by 2s and 3s, till all from end to end with beauties every shade of brown and fair, in colors gayer, joyous, than the morning mist. The long hall glittered like a bed of flowers. How might a man not wander from his wits, pierced through with eyes? But that I kept mine own, intent on her who wrapped in glorious dreams the second sight of some Astraean age, set compassed with professors. They, the while, discussed a doubt and tossed it to and fro. A clamor thickened mixed with inmost terms of art and science. Lady Blanc alone, of faded form and haughtiest lineaments, with all her autumn tresses falsely brown, shot sidelong daggers at us, a tiger cat in act to spring. At last, a solemn grace concluded, and we sought the gardens. There one walked, reciting by herself, and one in this hand held a volume as to read, and smoothed a petted peacock down with that. Some, to a low song, oared a shallop by, or under arches of the marble bridge, hung shadowed from the heat. Some hid and sought in the orange thickets, others tossed a ball above the fountain jets and back again with laughter. Others lay about the lawns of the older sort and murmured that their May was passing. What was learning unto them? They wished to marry. They could rule a house. Men hated learned women. Well, that's not quite the thing, though, but I mean, some surely, but we three sat muffled, like the fates, and often came Melissa hitting all we saw with shafts of gentle satire, keen to charity, that harmed not. Then they drooped. The chapel bells galled us. We left the walks. We mixed with those 600 maidens, clad in purest white, before two streams of light from wall to wall, while the great organ almost burst his pipes, groaning for power, and rolling through the court, along melodious thunder, to the sound of solemn psalms and silver litanies, the work of Ida, to call down from heaven a blessing on her labors for the world. Each gender, each group of people has something to do for the other, something to teach the other, or something it can do and something it can know that the others won't. Morn in the wake of the morning star came, furrowing all the orient into gold. We rose, and each by other dressed with care, descended to the court that lay three parts in shadow, but the muses' heads were touched above the darkness from their native east. There, while we stood beside the fount and watched, or seemed to watch, the dancing bubble, approached Melissa, tinged with wan from lack of sleep, our grief, and glowing round her dewy eyes, encircled Iris of a night of tears. And fly, she cried, oh fly, while yet you may. My mother knows. And when I asked her how my fault, she wept my fault, and yet not mine, yet mine in part. Oh, hear me, pardon me, my mother 'tis her wont from night to night to rail at Lady Psyche and her side. She says the princess should have been the head herself, and Lady Psyche the two arms. And so it was agreed when first they came, but Lady Psyche was not the right hand now, and the left are seldom used. Hers more than half the students, all the love. And so last night she fell to canvass you, her countrywomen. She did not envy her. Who ever saw such wild barbarians? Girls, more like men. And at these words, the snake, my secret, seemed to stir within my breasts. And oh, sirs, could I help it, but my cheek began to burn, and a lynx eye to fix, and made me hotter, till she laughed. Oh, marvelously modest maiden, you, men, girls like men. Why, if they had been men, you need not set your thoughts in rubric thus. For wholesale comment, pardon, I am shamed, that I must needs repeat for my excuse. What looks so little graceful men? For still my mother went revolving on the word. And so they are, very like men indeed, and with that woman closeted for hours, And came these dreadful words out one by one. Why, these are men, I shuddered, and you know it. Oh, ask me nothing, I said. And she knows too, and she conceals it. So my mother clutched the truth at once, but with no word from me, and now thus early risen she goes to inform the princess. Lady Psyche will be crushed, but you may yet be saved. And therefore fly, but heal me with your pardon ere you go. What pardon, sweet Melissa, for a blush? Said Cyril. Pale one, blush again. Then wear those lilies better blush our lives away, and let us breathe for 1 hour more in heaven. He added, lest some classic angel speak in scorn of us, they mounted Ganymedes to tumble Vulcans on the second morn. But I will melt this marble into wax, to yield us farther furlough. And he went. Melissa shook her doubtful curls, and thought he scarce would prosper. Tell us, Florian asked, how grew this feud betwixt the right and left? Oh, long ago, she said, betwixt these two, a vision smolders hidden. 'Tis my mother, too jealous, often fretful, as the wind, pent in a crevice. Much I bear with her. I never knew my father, but she says, God help her, she was wedded to a fool. And still she railed against the state of things. She had the care of Lady Ida's youth, and from the queen's decease she brought her up. But when your sister came, she won the heart of Ida. They were still together, grew, for they said themselves, inosculated, constant chords that shiver to one note, one mind in all things. Yet my mother still affirms your Psyche thieved her theories, and angled with them for her people's love. She calls her plagiarist, I know not what. I must go. I dare not tarry, and light as flies in the shadow of a bird, she fled. Then murmured Florian, gazing after her, an open-hearted maiden, true and pure. If I could love, why this were she. How pretty her blushing was, and how she blushed again. And if to close with Cyril's random wish, not like your princess crammed with erring pride, nor like poor Psyche, whom she drags in tow. The crane, I said, may chatter of the crane. The dove may murmur of the dove. But I, an eagle, clang, an eagle, to the sphere. My princess, oh my princess, true she errs, but in her own grand way, being herself 3 times more noble than 70 of men. She sees herself in every woman else, and so she wears her error like a crown to blind the truth and me, for her and her. Heeds are they to hand ambrosia, mix the nectar, but she whene'er she moves. The Samian here rises and she speaks, a Memnon smitten with the morning sun. And how can you say that you're in love if you haven't figured out what type of flaws the person has? So, saying from the court, we paced and ganged. The terrace ranged along the northern front, and leaning there on those balusters high, above the empurpled champagne, drank the gale that blown about the foliage underneath, and sated with the innumerable rose, beat balm upon our eyelids. Hither came Cyril, and yawning. "Oh, hard task," he cried. "No fighting shadows here." I forced a way through opposition, crabbed and gnarled. Better to clear the prime forests, heave and thump a league of street in summer solstice down, than hammer at this reverend gentlewoman. I knocked, and, bidden, entered, found her there, at point to move and settled in her eyes the green, malignant light of coming storm. Sir, I was courteous, every phrase were well oiled, as man's could be, yet maiden meek I prayed. Concealment she demanded who we were, and why we came. I fabled nothing fair, but your example Pilate told her all. Up went the hushed amaze of hand and eye, but when I dwelt upon your old affiance, she answered sharply that I talked astray. I urged the fierce inscription on the gate, and our 3 lives. True, we had limed ourselves with open eyes, and we must take the chance. But such extremes, I told her, well might harm the woman's cause. Not more than now, she said, so puddled as it is with favoritism. I tried the mother's heart. Shame might befall Melissa, knowing, saying not she knew. Her answer was, leave me to deal with that. I spoke of war to come, and many deaths, and she replied her duty was to speak. And duty, clear of consequences. Well, doesn't consequences kind of factor into what duty actually is? I grew discouraged, sir, but since I knew no rock so hard but that a little wave may beat admission in 1,000 years, I recommended. Decide, not ere you pause, to find you here, but in the second place, some say the third, the authentic foundress you. I offer boldly, we will seat you highest, wink at our advent. Help my prince to gang his rightful bride, and here I promise you some palace in our land, where you shall reign, the head and heart of all our fair she-world, and your great name flow on with broadening time, forever. Well, she balanced this a little, and told me she would answer us today. Meantime, be mute. Thus much, nor more I gained. He ceasing, came a message from the head. That afternoon the princess rode to take the dip of a certain strata to the north. Would we go with her? Should we find the land worth seeing, and the river made a fall out yonder? Then she pointed on to where a double hill ran up his furrowy forks, beyond the thick-leaved platans of the vale. Agreed to this, the day fled on through all its range of duties to the appointed hour. Then summoned to the porch we went. She stood above her maidens, higher by the head, her back against a pillar, her foot on one of those tame leopards. Now, what tarot card does that remind you of? Kitten-like he rolled, and pawed about her sandal. I drew not, I gazed. On a sudden, my strange seizure came upon me. The weird vision of our house. The princess, Ida, seemed a hollow show. Her joyous furred cats, a painted fantasy. Her college and her maidens, empty masks, and I myself the shadow of a dream. For all things were and were not, yet I felt my heart beat thick with passion and with awe. Then from my breast the involuntary sigh break, as she smote me with the light of eyes that lent my knee desire to kneel, and shook my pulses, till to horse we got, and so we went in long retinue, following up the river as it narrowed to the hills. I rode beside her, and to me she said, "O friend, we trust that you esteemed us not. Too harsh your companion yestermorn. Unwillingly we spake. No, not to her, I answered, but to one of whom we spake. Your Highness might have seen the thing you say." Again she cried, "Are you ambassadresses? From him to him we give you, being strange, a license speak, and let the topic die." I stammered that I knew him, could have wished. Our king expects. Was there no pre-contract? There is no truer hearted awe, you seem all he prefigured, and he could not see the bird of passage flying south, but longed to follow. Surely if your Highness kept your purport, you will shock him even to death. Our baser courses, children of despair. Poor boy, she said, can he not read no books? Quoit, tennis, ball no games? Nor deals in that which men delight in, martial exercise, to nurse a blind ideal like a girl. Methinks he seems no better than a girl, as girls once were, as we ourselves have been. We had our dreams, perhaps, he mixed with them. We touch on our dead self, nor shun to do it. Being other sense, we learnt our meaning here, to lift the woman's fallen divinity upon an even pedestal with man. Well, women are no less divine than men are, and if people are going to project a father and a son entity, a mother and a daughter, it makes just as much sense. We can talk about the reasons why, those sort of things go beyond that, but she paused and added, with a haughtier smile, "And as to pre-contracts, we move, my friend, at no man's back, but know ourself and thee. O Vashti, noble Vashti, summoned out, she kept her state, and left the drunken king to brawl at Shushan underneath the palms. Alas, your Highness breathes full east, I said. On that which leans to you, I know the prince. I prize his truth. And then how vast a work to assail this grey preeminence of a man. You grant me license, might I use it? Think, ere half be done, perchance your life may fail. Then comes the feebler Harris of your plan, and takes and ruins all, and thus your pains may only make that footprint upon sand, which old recurring waves of prejudice were smooth to nothing. Might I dread that you, with only fame for spouse and your great deeds for issue, yet may live in vain and miss, meanwhile, what every woman counts her due, love, children, happiness. And she exclaimed, what? Though your prince's love were like a god's, or, what they call gods anyways, have we not made ourself the sacrifice? Hanged man, how many tarot cards is there going to be in this one? You are bold indeed. We are not talked to thus. Yet will we say for children, would they grew, like field flowers everywhere. We like them well. But children die, and let me tell you, girl, however you babble, great deeds cannot die. They with the sun and moon renew their light, forever blessing those that look on them. Children, that men may pluck them from our hearts, kill us with pity, break us with ourselves. O children, there is nothing upon earth more miserable than she that has a son, and sees him err, nor would we work for fame, though she perhaps may reap the applause of great who earns the one pooh stow whence after hands may move the world, though she herself affect but little. Wherefore up and act nor shrink, for fear our solid aim be dissipated by frail successors. Would indeed we had been, in lieu of many mortal flies, a race of giants living each 1,000 years, that we might see our own work out and watch the sandy footprint harden into stone. It's important to have ideals we can live up to, even if, there's sort of maximums of what we could do. And I answered nothing, doubtful of myself if that strange poet princess, with her grand imaginations, might at all be won. And she broke out, interpreting my thoughts, and tried to be satisfied with the right that you're upon and that you're leaning towards, and keep striving towards more. And group together with those that have lofty ideals and lift each other up.